2024 has been a pretty interesting year in the world of motorcycling because we did see a slight decline in liter bikes sold around the world. So these guys thought, you know what? Size does matter, but not in the way that you may think. Because of the slight decline in the liter bikes, manufacturers said, you know what? It's time to go a little bit smaller. Now, not quite Kako size small, but they decided to make bikes that were more approachable, to find new customers and bring them into the world of motorcycling. You know, kind of like a gateway bike. So it comes to no surprise that most of the motorcycles that we featured here in MotoDeal are bikes that belong in the middleweight range or even smaller. So here's our list of the top 10 sub-liter bikes that we tested in 2024 from Behind the Desk. Now, before we get to the list, 3 of my personal favorite bikes that we tested this year that can't be on the list because they're liter bikes and, well, one is an EV, are, of course, a special shout-out needs to go to the Ducati Multistrada RS. Actually, that might be the best bike that I tested this year, but as weird as that bike is because it's a tourer that probably shouldn't be taken on long rides. Aside from that, of course, you have the Triumph Speed Twin, another personal favorite of mine, and of course the Segway E300 SE, all fantastic bikes, but they can't be part of a list. Now, honorable mention time for another bike that we tested this year, but because of its price range, I couldn't put it part of the list because the price of this bike is almost, well, double some of the other bikes that we have on the list. And I'm talking about the Aprilia RS 660. At number 10, we have the Moto CLC. Now, this bike is actually one of the perfect examples of a gateway motorcycle. Because myself, I've seen a bunch of new riders entering the world of motorcycling because of the CLC. Jack just mentioned to me that he saw several people who didn't even ride motorcycles, bought the CLC because they wanted to get into it. And I think it's just a perfect example of it. Now, the bike itself, the 450 platform of CF Moto, probably, in my opinion, that's been the gold mine for this company because they really created so many great bikes using that 450, and the CLC is just one of those. Now, it does look great, especially the bobber version. You take out that, that rear mudguard, that rear fairing, because that's the part that I actually don't like about it. And then guess what? CF Moto watched the video and listened to me. They took it out.
No, they didn't.
But in all seriousness, the bobber version of the CLC, for me, if that's the bike that we tested out on MotoDeal, it probably would be a little bit higher. But because we did the first CLC version, it is at number 10, which is still a good part of this list. It's still a perfect bike to begin with, in my opinion. The price point of the bike is also very attractive for new riders out there. The seat height is very low, and it's a bike that I think people would purchase and then get into riding and then maybe go up to a bigger displacement from there. Seat height, please.
It's not, you and I are not that far in height.
Yeah, we are.
Oh!
Flat foot.
Oh!
If Kako Tirona can flat foot, there's even a bend on his knee.
Check, look at.
Like, let's straight up boys to men right there, down on bended knee. And if he can do that, anybody can ride this bike. Anyone. At number 9, we have the Honda Rebel 500. Now, this was actually pretty close. In fact, you can argue that you can flip-flop the number 9 and number 10 because they're kind of similar bikes. They are kind of both bobberish. The Honda Rebel 500 really looks like a miniature version of a Harley Davidson, whereas the CLC looks a little bit more like a other version of the Triumph bobber. So it really depends on your preference in terms of aesthetics. Now, the Rebel 500, the reason why it's number 9 for me because it's the same rationale behind the CLC. And they're both great bikes. They're both, the seat height is very approachable for new riders out there who want to get their feet flat foot on the ground, both feet at the same time. It's also very easy to ride, and it also is a Honda. So it's a very reliable motorcycle. And here in the Philippines, the Honda Rebel 500 has been one of those bikes that people really purchase in terms of when they want to get into riding, right? I mean, it was that for people who want the classic aesthetics. Now there are other bikes out there that people purchase to get into the world of motorcycling, who want something a little bit more modern, who want something a little bit sporty. But for those who prefer the classic vibe, the Rebel 500 has been the bike of choice for many Filipinos. At number 8, we have the Royal Enfield Super Meteor 650. Now this is a bike that I was able to test out in Thailand. And because of the distances that we went, we did travel multiple days, about 4 days of riding. And it was very comfortable. I thought the bike wasn't going to be that comfortable for me, but because of the distance that we covered, it was a lot more comfortable than I had expected. Also, we did cross some places that didn't have great roads. There was some dirt on the road, there were some twisties, it rained a lot, and it was a good simulation of how it is to ride in the Philippines. And the Super Meteor handled all fantastically. Now, of all the 650s of Royal Enfield, this might not be my favorite because I do like the Interceptor more. There's the newer ones that are coming out that we haven't really reviewed here at MotoDeal yet that I prefer over the Super Meteor. But the Super Meteor does have, its fan base. In fact, it's a very important motorcycle for Royal Enfield, and I understand why. It's a great bike with a decent price point, and I think the build quality of RE has always been pretty good, and it's a bike that should be looked into in the middleweight category for cruisers out there. Coming in at number 7, we have the first and only Kawasaki that we've featured so far here at MotoDeal. It is the Z500. Now, yes, this bike is not so different from the 450 version of it. It does have 50 more cc's and a couple of things here and there that are a little bit different from the previous model of the Z450. But I think for me, the Z500 proved to be a very fun motorcycle. It was also very easy to ride. Again, another bike that beginners would be very comfortable in. And it was a little zippy, it would work great on some twisties. It would work great on the highway. It gets up to highway speeds. It also is fantastic in the city. It's extremely light, easy to ride, something that people can start out with and then move on to the bigger version of the Kawasaki bikes. Making it to the top 6 is none other than the Triumph Scrambler 400X. Now, the thing that I love about this bike is really more the aesthetics, right? When you look at the 400X, it kinda is not too different from the bigger sibling. When you look at it side by side, the size difference is really not that big. And that's one of the things I love about it, because it does look like a significant, motorcycle. The build quality of the bike, even though it's priced in the entry-level part, it's not too expensive. It's something that people can get into. It's a bike that it's meant for the road, but you can actually take on some light trails, especially if you put a little bit more aggressive tires on it. Now, the one thing about the bike that I'm probably not too fond of is that compared to the other version of the 400s of Triumph, it's not that great on the road. Don't get me wrong, it's still pretty good, but it just doesn't feel as planted as the other 400 of Triumph. Now, the reason why that is because it's a little bit more versatile, right? You can take this thing on some back roads, on some dirt roads, and it should handle that very well. And it's one of those bikes that, again, if you want to get into the world of scrambling, right? This is now entering to that. This is now the entry bike to that category. It's not quite exactly for the road. It's not quite for the hardcore off-roaders, but it's somewhere there in between. It's the happy medium of it. And at the price point of the bike, it's a great way to get started into that category of riding. And so now we have entered the top 5 of the best sub-liter bikes that we tested out in 2024. I want to point out that these are bikes that we tested, right? So if there's bikes out there that you're thinking, where's the Ducati Hypermono? Well, we didn't get to test it out in 2024, so maybe that would be somewhere in 2025. Unfortunately, we didn't get to test it out because I think that bike is going to be fantastic. So let's go to the top 5. At number 5, we have the Triumph Daytona 660. Now, the thing that I really love about this motorcycle is that it is versatile. It's versatile in the sense that it's a bike that you can use on the daily. So you can ride it around the city, no problem. It's comfortable enough. And then if you want to have a little bit more fun with it, take it on the twisties, you can take it a little bit more aggressive on some twisties and push the bike even further. Now, if you really want to maximize the bike, outside of the city and the twisties, it's a bike that you can also take on the racetrack and have a lot of fun with it. So because that you can take it on 3 different places, right? You can take it on city riding, on some twisties, and the racetrack. I mean, it covers pretty much a lot of the things that you would want to take a sport bike in. And it's, the handlebars are not too low, so it is pretty comfortable. It's something that's, I think, looks pretty good. But I also think that it's a bike that people can start out with. It's not a bike that people would get scared of, even though it is a little bit bigger than some of the bikes that I just mentioned at 660. It is quick enough. It is something that you can definitely have a lot of fun with when you're pushing it on the racetrack. In fact, you can probably max it out on the racetrack as, well, I have. So here we go, the top 4. Now, honestly, the top 4 was, I played around with this a lot because it was a little bit difficult for me to choose which would be at number 4, at number 3, number 2, number 1, because the rest of these bikes that I'm about to mention, I was really drawn to a lot. These were bikes that I thought, you know what, I actually would buy this bike. I actually want one of these. These are bikes that I think you could argue would probably be at number 1, and being number 4, number 1, it's the difference at this level, at least for me, is very, very close. Now, I want to point out again, the bikes that we've mentioned on this list, these are not the best performing bikes that we tested out in 2024. In fact, that belongs to the Ducati MTS RS. But this is really more, I think, of the bikes that is important to the world of motorcycling, because I think these bikes are going to bring new riders into this world. So at number 4, I think this bike is extremely important to Aprilia. Now, Aprilia is a bike that, is a bike manufacturer, at least here in the Philippines, that we really don't see that many of until this bike came into the market. I am talking about the RS 457. Now, I know what you may be thinking, but that bike is not made in Italy anymore. You know what? So what? I think this bike is extremely important for Aprilia and even to the motorcycling world in general, because I was told by the distributors of Aprilia here in the Philippines that every time they get a new shipment in, everything has been spoken for. So that means there are people out there that are purchasing this bike for couple of things, right? They want a bike specific for the track. Another one is that they want a bike that, they could ride on the daily. And guess what? You could do both with this bike. It's extremely light, it's extremely nimble, very friendly to riders out there, and it's got a lot of tech. I mean, the bike it really surprised me how much tech that this bike has. Now, you may say it's a little bit too small, but in my opinion, you know what? It's not that small, especially for the Philippine market. I mean, there's not that many 6'5" guys out there who are going to be riding this bike and thinking that it's a pocket bike. It's because I think the size actually for the Philippine market is very good. I think the performance is extremely great. Again, this is a bike that I actually considered for the top 3, even as high as in the top 2. And I think this bike is going to do really well. I think when the Tuono comes out, I think that's going to do also well for Aprilia, but I think the one that's going to do extremely well is when the Touareg 457 comes out. Yes, that's probably not going to happen until maybe 2025 or maybe even 2026, but the 457 platform of Aprilia is going to really, we're going to see a whole lot of those here in the Philippine market very soon. Okay, so here we are in the podium territory, the 1, 2, 3. Again, this bike that I'm about to talk about is a bike that the older version of it was a bike that I actually really enjoyed. I thought, it's a bike that, I tested out in the mountains in the Himalayas, and I really liked it. And it's to no surprise, because that's really where the bike was, supposed to be used. That hence the name Himalayan. But the 457 Hima of RE is phenomenal. The bike, the older version, the 400, on the highway, it was just too slow. It was really meant for the mountains. It's really meant for off-road. But the 450 version of it, the new generation Himalayan, it's got more tech. It's actually got some riding modes. It has a TFT screen. And I think it looks really great. It feels substantial. You can actually take this bike off-road on the highway, or sorry, you could take this bike on the highway, on the expressway with the 400cc limit here in the Philippines to some trails. And I think that's very important for the ADV market here in the Philippines, because not all trails are within, you know, the city, right? You have to go a little bit further out. And not everybody will want to have a trailer to put their bikes on just to bring it to the trail. This is actually a bike that you can take from the city on the expressway into the trail, and it's gonna handle that perfectly. I think the bike feels substantial, the build quality is good. It's also a bike that once you drop it, and guess what, you are gonna drop it, it's gonna be able to withstand some falls. I mean, it's also a bike that, you know, the more scratches and dents here and there, it adds to the character of the bike. It's not supposed to be super clean and pristine, right? It's nice to have a little bit of character on a bike such as this. It's a rugged adventure bike, and I think it's a bike that's, you know, that's gonna live up to the name of the Royal Enfield Himalayan, and it might actually do better, in my opinion, than the previous generation. So, top 2 bikes of 2024. Yes, there are 2 bikes that I haven't mentioned yet, and you're probably wondering which one is number 1, which one is number 2. Well, this was difficult, I have to admit. This is both bikes here. They're very different. They're different types of riders. And I couldn't really decide which is 1, which is 2. So I'm gonna cheat and say one is 1, the other one is 1A.
What? What? You can't do that.
Oh yes, yes I can do that. This is my video. I decide that one is 1, the other one is 1A. Okay. So obviously the 2 bikes that are left that I haven't mentioned yet are the Triumph Speed 400 and the CF Moto MT 450. So between these 2 bikes, the MT is more versatile. It's also a little bit more rugged. You know, you can buy parts readily available on Lazada. You can take this thing river crossing, especially if you, again, change the tires to something a little bit more aggressive. But in my opinion, the Speed 400 is more important for the fact that it is the bike that I've seen a lot of people purchase as their first motorcycle. Again, the MT, people who buy that bike, probably already ride. They probably already have another motorcycle. It takes a little bit more skill to ride that bike, in my opinion, because you're probably gonna take this bike off-road. The Speed 400, it's people who are starting out in the world of motorcycling, and that's why I think it's important. The mini version of the Tenere 700, I love it, the MT. The Speed 400 is something that's, again, will invite new people into the world of motorcycling. That's why for me, the Triumph Speed 400 is 1, the CF Moto MT is 1A. Well, that does it for the year 2024. Now, there are probably going to be some of you out there who are going to be, you know, reacting violently to my list. You can mention it, you can write on the comments below. But it's been a great year for the world of motorcycling, and we hope that 2025 is going to be even better. For more information about the bikes that we mentioned, and if you want to check out the videos or the articles, you please log on to www.motodeal.com.ph. I'm Jinno, and this has been Behind a Desk. Happy New Year!